Hey, power people. Welcome to Renewable Rides, powered by VECKTA. I'm Gareth Evans, the CEO and founder.
And I'm Dan Roberts, head of sales. In each episode, we'll uncover the latest trends, learnings, challenges, and triumphs relating to the energy transition, on-site energy, and sustainability through the experiences of our inspiring guests and team here at VECKTA.
So get ready for an exhilarating adventure into the fast-paced world of challenging limits, adapting purposefully, and empowering co-creation to accelerate the energy transition with those that are on a mission to create a more resilient, profitable, sustainable, and thriving energy future. So let's go. Right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Renewable Rides. And Dan and I are really excited to be joined today by Ned Baxter, who is the VP of Green Hydrogen at Worley. Ned and I are long-term friends, colleagues, and I love having followed Ned's career and seeing how he's at the cutting edge of green hydrogen today. So welcome, Ned.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to be here. Exciting times. Always love having a chat with you, Gareth, and great to meet you, Dan.
Likewise.
So Ned, we always start with what are you passionate about? So let us hear the inside track.
I'm a big believer in having one crack at it. My mum's a Buddhist, right? And she's big on reincarnation and stuff, but sorry, Mum, I'm not there yet. I reckon we have one crack at life. And I think I'm really passionate on leaving some sort of footprint. I'm not grandiose in terms of thinking I'm going to change the world by myself and be Alexander the Great or Napoleon. Or I just want to depart this earth thinking I've made it a better place in some small form. So that's what drives me and what I'm really passionate about.
I love that. Where do you think that comes from, Ned? Like, what's the origin of that belief?
I have no idea. Like, I've always been a bit of a weird unit. Like, I've always been a bit of a pretty hyperactive, driven kind of guy. Don't know. Maybe it's innate. Maybe it's nature nurture. I'm not sure. I grew up in a pretty small community, far northwestern Australia. We're talking 1,500 people. Moved around a lot. I just think it's, and I generally just love life. Life is cool. Like, it's good. So you might as well give it a crack, right? But I think you're in a similar vein, Gareth. I don't know you well enough, Dan, but you seem to be the same path. So I don't know, but I've always kind of been like that. So that's my answer.
Love it. I think we're all aligned on that. Swing for the fences. Leave a big impact, take the risks.
Got to give it a crack, right? Got to give it a crack.
It's brilliant. So, Ned, tell us a bit about what are you working on today? So, VP of Green Hydrogen, what does that mean? What are you focused on?
So look, I've been with Worley for about 13 years, and I've been in this role for about going on 2 and a bit, right? So what I'm focused on at the moment is something I'm super excited about. It's hydrogen, super buzzword. I'm not a technical expert, but what I'm being brought in to help lead and kind of coalesce a program of work focused on how we deliver productized solutions to the hydrogen market that helps us serve our customers and helps them solve the challenge around hydrogen. How do we solve their commerciality challenges? How do we make it a more viable energy resource going forward? I think in the market, it's no secret that there's some naysayers and there's like, okay, are there some commerciality challenges that face? But we are, as a company, and I've been brought in to help that, been essentially trying to help alleviate and solve that problem, right? That's what I'm here to do.
And so, Ned, I think there are a lot of naysayers in the market. And there's also a massive amount of hype around it. What is it that gets you excited about green hydrogen?
Well, I think it's not the key. I think we need to, just taking a slight segue in this energy transition, I think we need to be really pragmatic in realizing that there's not going to be a panacea. There's not going to be a silver bullet or a single skeleton key, right? It is going to be a myriad of solutions that solve a really, really complex problem that we're facing. And it's not just a kits and giggles problem, right? That we are facing as a society, we are facing a huge, complex problem that we will be, dealing and fighting for generations, long after we've been gone, right? So going back to hydrogen, yeah, for sure, there's some naysayers, but those naysayers, I would say, what else is this? Why? Why are you hell-bent on stripping back a potential solution and trying, and uncovering something that could help us solve this incredibly, somewhat grim social situation that we are sitting in? So what makes me excited is I can be a part of that solution. I can be a part of helping society get to a point where we are combating. We're fighters as a human race, right? We're fighters, and we'll have to solve things. But sometimes we can be caught in a bit of malaise, and I think we as a society sometimes need to snap out of that malaise and realize that we need to get on with it, right? So hydrogen, yeah, it's green hydrogen. So for people would have heard green, blue, pink, brown. Green, in a nutshell, or renewable hydrogen is the proper term, is essentially a hydrogen asset that is powered by a renewable energy source. So we're talking solar, wind, whatever. But so there's no carbon emissions attached to the production of this energy. And we as a company I think we're in a really leading position to help our customers deliver this quicker, cheaper, which it needs to be, and at scale in the near to medium term. So that's bloody exciting, right? That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Ned, I appreciate the definition for our listeners. Can you talk through some of the applications for green hydrogen? I guess maybe some of the applications today and maybe some of the applications that are on the horizon as the work that you're doing helps bring some of the costs down.
Yeah, so I guess, look, hydrogen again is, there's a myriad of applications that we're looking at. You can, or within society, you hear of hydrogen-powered cars, hydrogen-powered trucks and buses. On the east coast of Australia, they're looking at having a transport route that is primarily hydrogen-based. We at Worley are generally large-scale assets, industrial scale. So whether it's for international energy companies decarbonising their own assets, so perhaps refineries, for instance, looking at them having a power source, hydrogen as that power source, to larger scale energy hubs that have hydrogen as a component of a larger energy hub. In the market, there's a huge amount of kind of buzz around that, and I think why this is just me kind of theorizing, but why there may be a bit of negativity or going back to the naysayers comment. It may be not coming on as quickly as possible. And there's a lot of buzz around it, and people aren't seeing the material realization of that yet. But that's to be expected. This is somewhat of a complex problem. And we as an organization understand that we need to help our customers meet certain commerciality thresholds, help make that a viable resource, right? Going back to my background as a undergrad, I did an undergrad degree that integrated sustainable development with finance, with the real understanding and firm belief, which I still hold, of that the two need to work together. We can't just shut down one arm to help the other one grow. We can't do that. We need to make this work as an ecosystem, right? So yes, hydrogen in its real sense is a viable technology right now in terms of technology platform. We just need to support the commerciality elements and make sure that it can work within commerce. How can we make that work the wheels spin around? So that's I hope that covers what you're talking about.
And what size units are we talking about, Ned? What sort of power generation capacity are we thinking?
Well, we're talking blocks of 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt as a starting point. Out in the marketplace, you're seeing 10 gigawatts, 6 gigawatts, but I think that's a little further along the track, right? But this was 6 months ago, but I think the biggest purchased electrolyzer in Australia at the time was 2.5 megawatts, which is along the for that truck route along the east coast of Australia. So I think once we get to a point, once the industry gets to a point where it is comfortable to scale, it will need to do so to meet those economic thresholds and make it a viable product. But you need, like with any technology or any kind of application or energy source, you need to prove that out, and that's where we're at. That's the hard and fast of it.
And that's part of the barrier today seems to be obviously the commercial competitiveness or the economic viability. And I think, it's based on my experience, the heavy industries particularly like to do everything bespoke and always make tweaks and not accept kind of a standard solution. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, look, you bang on, Gareth, and I think it's fundamental to understand there are some differences from hydrogen to more traditional energy sources, such as like offshore gas or, perhaps iron ore resources. Whereas hydrogen is somewhat, it lends itself to being standardized in terms of, I'm going to absolutely butcher this, but essentially, if you think about it, you've got a hydrogen asset, needs water coming in at a certain purity. You've got the electrolyzer block in the middle of that, and hydrogen comes out the other end. Again, please don't, and there's some standard modules that need to be built into there. But one way to remove that, the bespoke element, which actually equates to cost, is doing, leveraging economies of scale. So doing everything standardized, being able to order from vendors at a larger scale, being able to eradicate design tweaks on an asset by asset basis, remove timescales so you're getting a return on your investment quicker, which actually is a huge lever, and also just stripping out any of the bespoke elements that are absolutely not necessary. Yes, there are going to be requirements across legislative areas around making sure there's equates to certain safety standards, but standardization is absolutely one of the cost levers we need to pull within the hydrogen space to make this a long-term commercially attractive solution.
Yeah, it's super fascinating times, isn't it? We're seeing it both in the EV space. Companies are trying to push the barrier, drive more adoption, and they're struggling with some of the commercial models, with the standardization, with rolling these things out at scale and doing it in a really efficient way. And I think a natural competitor to that was the hydrogen industry for cars, which Shell have just come out in California and said they're going to close all their hydrogen fueling stations because they can't get access to cost competitive hydrogen, and they can't get enough of it. And so it's super interesting times, isn't it, where we've got burgeoning demand, interesting strategies, and how do we manage the kind of the need and the wants with doing this in a strategic, adaptable way such that we don't sort of lose people's confidence.
Yeah, look, and I guess Just take, so again, we focus largely on larger scale assets, industrial usage, which is actually, I think, simpler in terms of the fundamental market dynamics that you're playing within, right? You've got an end user, large scale, here we go, industrial use. When you're looking at cars, look, I think that you've got a really interesting dynamic here, right? So let's use trucking as an example because it's somewhat simpler and it's a little. You've got to get the source of energy, so you've got to get hydrogen on a regular basis. Like at the moment, you look at our cars. You go to any fuel stop around the corner, easy. You've got a fuel source. You've got a huge amount of vehicles, and how do we, transfer that? You've got to have. Having to build a market as opposed to on a pretty micro scale compared to that industrial use. Some of our customers are looking to just decarbonize their own assets. So the market dynamic is self-contained, if that makes sense. We'll make this energy source and we'll use it ourselves. We don't need to talk to any other third parties. Whereas it's a lot more of a complex beast when you're talking about small scale customers who are buying a hydrogen car. Then, okay, we need fueling stations. You don't want to drive, if you in the US, you want to drive 700 kilometers. Do you want to have to look up on Google, where's the next hydrogen space? And I think to a smaller degree, the electrical vehicle, are facing those as well. Some of the consumer concerns that they're facing are pretty similar. Circling back on that, you mentioned earlier, and you triggered something here around the bespoke elements and what are the challenges we're facing. I think there's absolutely going to be a mandatory requirement to have some bespoke elements, but I must admit, part of me really comes to believe that it's ego-driven. There's a humanistic kind of quality that we want to have something that's a little different. Is there a ego-driven component of certain customers who want to make sure that it's their design? They don't want to conform to certain, and I suppose we're the best. We've got the best asset, as opposed to moving towards a standardized solution. To a lesser extent, it's a bit glib, but people with their cars, you're buying a standardized car, but some people like having spinning rims or a certain subwoofer in their car or a certain paint tone. That's a bit odd, but I think that's a humanistic quality that we need to overcome in terms of moving down this path of standardization for the greater good, to make to get an end outcome that is better for society as a whole.
Ned, as you're working on this, because it's a big problem to solve, are you borrowing from other areas of energy to identify this? One that comes to mind as you're talking about the standardization is solar panels, for example. There's a small handful of standard sizes of solar panels, many different makers, but it makes it easier for the long tail of the market to deploy these things. When you talk about modularity, is that one of the ways that you're thinking about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So you look at the same way the industrial gas companies have gone down this route, like everything's standard in terms of what they deploy, and there's a myriad of benefits. Yes, some customers are going down the path of going, okay, well, not their design, but I think we need to move down this path. How long that's going to take, I don't know. But like you said, solar panels are in certain sizes because it makes it makes the ecosystem a lot smoother, right? And you'd see this in your own. I'd be interested to get your view on, what customers you're talking about, how much easier it becomes when you're looking at standardized. You're supporting your customers make decisions around what energy sources they've got, right? In any kind of MCA or any kind of decision-making analysis framework, 7 options is much easier than 700 options, right? Or 5 options versus 500 options. Is that what you're seeing in the market?
Yeah, it's it's one of the biggest things that I would say we bring to the table when we're working with large commercial and industrial businesses. Is today the most traditional way is they go and source a bunch of options from a variety of different vendors that are in different commercial models, different configurations, different technologies, and uh, it makes it almost impossible to make a decision on which path is best versus considering the options, identifying what's best, and then going and making that ask of the suppliers in the market. And I think it's just amplified at the commercial industrial level. And when I say commercial industrial, we're talking manufacturing and food and beverage, distribution, logistics. Whereas I think the industrial scale that you're talking about is large, 100 megawatt plus refineries. But I think a very similar problem.
The stat that we use here is that up to like between 30 and 70% of project costs today, according to the National Renewable Energy Lab, is soft costs, the consulting, the engineering, the procurement, the contracts. And I think, what you're doing, I think should be applauded, because a lot of those costs can be stripped out the system. A customer should be paying for the hardware and for the construction, not for all the lead up to get to that point. And I think if we can all work to streamline that process, make sure they're getting the right system and then making sure that they've got some options, but how do we use those modular designs to then plug it all together?
Yeah, and that's not to kind of say that we're not coming up with some incredibly smart engineering solutions here, right?
Yeah,
we absolutely are. And I guess one of the key differentiators we believe we're doing is working hand in glove with our supply chain and key vendors across that broader ecosystem to come up with solutions that are collaborative and kind of, yes, they're standardized, but they are collaborative, they are market leading, and we're looking to leverage their own expertise, right? Making sure that we are letting the bakers bake, letting the experts do their job in a way rather than dictating terms to them around, no, we're going to have this, to this nth degree. And so, and asking them the question, why have you come up with the solution in the way you've done it? Is it based off operational data? Is it based off, and generally it's because they're experts in their fields as well, right? Where we have to ensure that we work in a very collaborative manner that leverages those expertise. Yeah. We can't, believe that we're going to come up with that solution ourselves.
Ned, you got a unique view. What do you see the next 5-10 years of this market looking like?
Look, where I think we as the market's at a bit of an inflection point, right? Society, we touched on this earlier. Society has definitely, within society, there's definitely some naysayers on the hydrogen market, although it has got an incredible amount of buzz, which is rightly so, right? I think we are at a point where we need to start putting buzz and theory to practice at scale. It needs to start making an impact on the total energy mix for us to then materialize and learn from this kind of the application of this technology. So you're talking 5-10 years. I'm really, really hoping that we are part of the solution that helps hydrogen become a very significant, renewable hydrogen become a very significant part of that global energy mix at scale. So we're going to see international energy companies and new market entrants look to prove up their solutions, prove up their assets, get their teeth stuck into some smaller pilot plants and then look to scale. We're talking, and over that 5 to 10 year time frame, I think that's reasonable, right? We want to get to that path sooner rather than later. But I think that in an ideal situation, that's where we and we're part of that solution, right? I think we can.
And I think in parallel to that, Ned, Dan and I were just talking about this on a previous episode, episode 27, for anyone who wants to check it out. It's around grid constraints, for these assets. I think what excites me most about the line of work we're in is that these assets are going to be extremely energy hungry. and there are significant grid constraints. And if we want to bring these projects online, we can't rely on the existing capacity within the grid and the sort of the utility service providers. So we have to build new, renewable, reliable, affordable, clean, sustainable assets to power these facilities. And so we need to have a really good game plan for how we combine technologies to power these facilities.
And I think that's where the market is really going to go toward that integrated energy hub concept, right? So you've got an energy source, whether renewable, and that's standalone to the grid that goes into a, say, like a hydrogen asset, and then maybe, power. So that power to X concept, right? So you've got a very complex and standalone asset that has that whole, ecosystem tied into one another. Whether you've got large scale solar panels feeding into, stores power the asset that's driving hydrogen and maybe going to ammonia. I think that's probably going to be the path forward in a lot of instances for the market to get the scale that they need.
Ned, one of the things we like to ask all of our guests, and we've talked a lot about hydrogen, but don't feel yourself to be constrained to that. But what if you could be any energy technology, what would it be and why?
I saw this come up in the doc, and I was like, "What?" Okay, any energy source and why?
Be your electrolyzer if you want it to be, but
we've had some say transmission lines previously, so it's don't constrain yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Look, how about I will be I'm from Australia, so let's go with solar panels because I like it hot. And I'm simple, right? So let's roll with solar panels.
Love it.
Scalable, making an impact on the world.
Yeah, exactly. Leak.
And do you have any favorite quotes that you like to live by or remind yourself of?
Look, there's everyone loves a good quote, right? But look, a mentor of mine in his quite, you know him as well, a guy called Paul Hardesty, right? He was. I remember him sitting me down and looking at me dead in the eye in his really earnest way, and goes, "You only have one crack at this. Better have the best crack you can." And I was like, "Okay." Look, it's not a sexy quote, or it's not really, that it's not very intelligent. But I think that hits home, right? And it going full circle to why I am as I am. I think that's a big part of what drives me. You only have one crack at this. Again, apologies to Mum and the Buddhist teachings, but that's my view, and I'm sticking with it until further notice. Right.
That resonates quite substantially. The last one we'll ask you is if you could listen to anyone on the podcast, who would you want us to have on, and what would you ask them?
Dead or alive?
Either.
Ooh, first time we've been asked that. I would love to be able to interview them, but maybe both if you have someone that's no longer with us.
Let's go with Sir Isaac Newton. Is someone that's dead?
Yep. Great answer.
And I think, look, I'm going to go super cliche here, but I think in a world where we are inundated with hyperbolic, polarizing, divisive leaders, I think someone like a Barack Obama would be incredibly insightful to. You got to shoot for the stars, guys. You got to shoot for the stars in terms of getting someone on. But I think he provides a really calming and balanced view, right? But as an Australian, as someone that I admire from afar, so I think he would be incredibly insightful to provide a fairly calm and balanced view on how we can juggle the myriad of energy sources and what have you. And he might be, post office, he might be a bit more unleashed in his views on the future, right?
Exactly.
Love that. That's great. Appreciate the time, Ned.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for taking the time.
No, it's always a pleasure.
Great discussion. What are your takeaways?
I really appreciated his perspective, and I think the biggest thing that I took away was the need for standardization. I think we're seeing this in other elements of the energy transition to bring down the costs. And within that standardization, not just in the equipment, but then the approach to deploying to strip out as much of the soft costs in these projects. I think the days of these extremely large scale bespoke projects, you can't apply that same logic to the smaller scale projects. And so if you do, you have extreme soft costs. And so doing everything we can to strip those out, create standardization, create modularity. I completely agree with Ned's point and approach there. How about yourself?
No, it's super interesting, isn't it? Because we've heard from both him and Jetson about the excitement around hydrogen. And then we heard from Howard the reservations around hydrogen. And we're also seeing that playing out in the market, aren't we, in terms of a lot of hype, a lot of naysayers, a lot of friction. I think the opportunity is there. Let's see if the industry can prove it out. And I'm super excited to see people like Ned with a complete passion for making an impact and leaving a better planet than what we adopted is absolutely critical to our success. We need people with that motivation and outlook.
Completely agree. Now we need and more people that are as fired up as Ned. We need them joining in and being part of the solution in the energy transition.
That's it. It's a great one. Good. Well, see you next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gareth.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.